and we're recording. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Derry, who's going to kick us off for our next installment of PD Fridays.
Thank you so much, Laura, and welcome everyone. Good morning. My name is Derry, and I work for the Office of Family Community Empowerment, and I'm so excited to welcome you all to our Digital Professional Development Friday. Yay! So let's see who's it. So first of all, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I do have a couple of announcements, but I just want to say that I want to give a huge shout out to our DIIT Empowerment Tech team, and also our amazing partner, Tali. So we have Laura, Tali, Lisa, Lois, and Judy on the line today. So thank you so much. And also, what I want to do is I want to give you guys some face updates. So let's do some face updates. And the first thing I wanted to share is that Wednesday, we had a watch party where we talked about COVID-19 testing at school sites. We do have the pre-recorded session. We emailed every parent coordinator, FLC, FSC yesterday with the pre-recorded session, and including guidance on how you can have a conversations with your parents at the school. So the action of the week is we are asking parent coordinators to help to provide that information to our parents, and also provide the consent forms. If there is questions regarding the consent forms, or you have questions regarding COVID-19 testing, please email face@schools.nyc.gov. Again, it's face@schools.nyc.gov. And what I want to do is that I actually want to bring in my colleague, Bibi. She is on the line. I'm going to see if I can quickly unmute her. Bibi, are you on the line? Hi, Bibi.
Good morning, everyone. How are you, Derry? Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Bibi, for joining us. This is my other colleague, Bibi. She's on the school-based team, and she has some exciting news to share with you guys, and also learning opportunities, because right now it's all about virtual elections. So, Bibi, can you let us know if there's any upcoming professional developments that we can look forward to?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I just want to say that today, actually, we're having a citywide election training at 5 o'clock. So please join us. It is open to all. It is a citywide training in English. I will put the links in the chat for all of these that I'm mentioning. We also have Zoom training on the that's the 13th, yep, at 5 o'clock. I will also put those links in there. And we will have a in-language election training, and that will be on the 14th at 4 o'clock. So with that, I know a lot of folks have been asking about Zoom, if we can have a Zoom in language. We could not, the timing, Zoom could not facilitate an in language, but our partners in NYC, Include NYC, is doing an in-language Spanish training for the Zoom platform, and that is actually today at 5:30. So you can go to a virtual election, or you can go to Zoom platform in language, or you can go to the in-language virtual election on the 14th, or Zoom on the 13th. So lots of options. I have flyers and I have links, and I will put all of that in the chat for you all. That's it. Thanks, Derry.
Thank you, Bibi. One question from one of our parent coordinators. Is this open to parent coordinators or parents, or parent coordinators and parents?
We are inclusive, open, and providing it for the entire city. Come on board if you're available, to all of them.
All right, there you go. It's open to everyone, so join today.
Bring a friend, bring a neighbor.
Bring everybody. It's all about the election this month. And please, guys, if there's some best practices that as you guys are doing the elections that you want to share, remember that we have a parent coordinator website. Please share your best practice, share exactly, even if you have like a calendar, I'm sorry, not a calendar, if you have a spreadsheet, how you are doing verifications, add that to the community chat. Let's share, let's talk about these elections. So again, thank you so much, Vivi.
Yep,
And
you're welcome. I just wanted to mention that wonderful colleagues of mine are actually facilitating the training this evening, and it's going to be a mock election.
oh my,
So come on and see what the election looks like in real time on a platform. So this is exciting. I'm really excited. So all of you, hopefully we'll see all 198 of you on the platform. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
thank you, Vivi. Okay, that ends our about face updates. So what I want to do is I want to turn it over to Laura for our exciting DI. Actually, it's all about accessibility. So Laura.
Well, before that, we're going to get over to Tali, who's going to share some important information about a really cool experience that's coming and how Common Sense and Tali are going to support you guys. So I'm going to turn it over to Tali, and Tali, just let me know when you want me to advance to the next slides.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So we can go ahead to the next one right now. And next week is going to be Digital Citizenship Week. It's in 2 weeks is Digital Citizenship Week. And just as a reminder, that's all about helping kids and families think about healthy media balance. How do we behave safely and ethically and responsibly online? That's everything from creating safe passwords to making sure we're building positive online relationships and not cyberbullying, to thinking about news literacy. How do we identify misinformation and disinformation and so forth? And so we'd love for schools to pose this question every day: how am I being a good digital citizen? And we've got a list of resources for you. So if you don't mind going to the next slide, Laura. So I know that this is a busy slide. I wanted to give you a couple of ideas here. So first of all, starting the week of the 19th, every day on Wide Open School, and we have a partnership with the DOE, so you can see that URL at the top, nycschools.wideopenschool.org. We'll have a digital citizenship activity every day for families to do with their kids, and it's divided up into preschool, K through 2, 3 through 5, middle school and high school. And then we also have that other URL that I shared, commonsense.org/education/family resources, where we've got extensive family tips related to digital citizenship. So you can see on the right-hand side, we've got media balance and well-being, privacy and security, and so forth. And we have those in 12 languages. So you can see next to that. So you can go ahead and post that on your school's website. You can share it via social media or email. You're always allowed to use any of our resources. We have Creative Commons license. And these are great family tips just to remind families how to talk to their kids about digital citizenship and safe online use. And then if you go to the next slide, please, Laura. I wanted to give you an idea about what the family tip sheets and family activities look like too. So we have family engagement activities for every topic area as well. You can see on your screen an example of the digital footprint and identity one. So it's just broken down. This is a 3rd through 5th grade activity. And the idea is that families are doing this with their kids. In some families, we have older siblings and younger siblings doing it together. And it's just about having an activity that you can do to learn about a topic. It's not about turning it in. It's more about like that connection and bonding and learning together. And so again, you can get that at that same URL. The next few slides I'm going to go through very quickly. These are just examples of what you could post on your school's site every day. So last week we had that great PD about tell your school story. So this could be a resource you put up. I have it in the notes, but you could save this as a JPEG. You can talk to whoever manages your school website and they could post this every day. So I won't go through each of them, but I have one for every single day so we can kind of go through it quickly, Laura, if you don't mind. So Tuesday's privacy and security. And again, there's that key question. Wednesday, digital footprint and identity. Thursday, we combined relationships and communication, which with cyberbullying, digital drama and hate speech. And then Friday with news and media literacy. And so, you know, we're also offering a kind of pop-up PD, Laura and I, next week. I believe it's next Thursday, right, Laura?
Yep, next Thursday.
And we can share that with Derry too, if any of you want to join. We're going to be doing it for educators and parent coordinators about how to infuse Digital Citizenship Week. And then this is just the recap slide again, so that you've got this as a resource later. I'm also going to add to this page, the link for Digital Citizenship Week. We're currently working on it right now, so I didn't want to share it at the moment, but I'll add that for later. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Tali. And again, I'm super excited for Digital Citizenship Week. I think, especially now when all of our learning is essentially taking place online, even for the hybrid students, it's so important to address these topics and to make sure that teachers feel empowered, students feel empowered, and families feel empowered, right? Because so many of our families, I think they just don't understand how all of this works. So really making sure that we turnkey this information so that everyone feels ready and safe to be in the online space. So welcome. As you know, we are the Division of Instructional and Information Technology. My name is Laura Ogando. I'm one of the program managers for the Office of Digital Literacy and Inclusion. And with me today are my fellow colleagues at DIIT. So I'm going to turn it over to Lisa to introduce herself.
Hi, welcome everyone. We're so happy that you're here. I'm Lisa Nielsen. I'm the Senior Director of the Office of Digital Literacy and Inclusion. And thank you for those who are here today, and for those who keep coming each week. We hope we bring you great experiences. And I will turn it over to Christina.
Hi, everyone. Good to see everyone again. Christina Basias, also at DIIT, in the EdTech program, here supporting Lisa, Laura, and Latiqua. Passing it back to Laura.
All right, and then just so that you guys know, we have Latiqua Spivey, who is our awesome assistant in our office, and she is on the back end. So if you need anything, again, we're all in the chat. Lisa, Christina, Tali, Derry, everyone's in the chat. So if you need anything, please, please, please pop it in the chat. We will make sure we get it addressed. But first things first, we want to know who's in the room. We know that we have quite the crowd today. There are 237 of you. Super awesome. So let's go ahead and find out who's in the room. You'll see a poll should be on your screen right now. So let us know who you are. I know we probably have a ton of parent coordinators on the call, but if you're an FLC, an FSC, if you're a teacher, administrator, school secretary, let us know. And if you happen to fall into that other category, certainly pop in the chat what you do. All right, so I'll give you guys a couple of more moments, but it looks like we have a ton of parent coordinators on the call. So I want to welcome all of you, but not just our parent coordinators, everyone who's here. Again, it's Friday, another long week at the DOE filled with, all sorts of news and drama and whatnot. And so we know you could be doing a lot of other things, probably attending, another umpteen meetings, but you're here with us making that commitment to learn and grow. And so we're so excited to have you here. I am going to go ahead and end our poll, and I'll share the results with you so that you can see we have almost 150 parent coordinators on the call. It's so amazing. And again, we have over 200 and wow, we're about to get to 250 participants. So I'm so excited to have all of you here again. Thank you for coming. Thank you for showing up. Now, one more quick question. I'll launch this poll for us. How are you feeling today? This is all of us here making all of our fun faces. And again, I know there's a lot of stuff happening. We honor and respect all the feelings. So it is absolutely okay to say you're kind of feeling a little tired, maybe a little sad, a little angry. I mean, I feel like every week I go through all like the emotions.
Me too, Laura. It's always a struggle.
Oh yeah.
Ditto. Oh.
All the emotions. I've been A through G, like the whole week, and then depending on, the time of day, I might go from like an A to an F to back to a C over to a G. I mean, I'm all over the place.
This is the time for that.
Totally, totally. All the feelings, right? We're having all the feelings. I'm going to give you 5 more seconds to pop your response into that poll. And it looks like, not a big shocker there, but a lot of us are in that E category, right? We're a little tired. I get it. You know, there's no shame in that. It's been a long week. And I know that we've got a nice long weekend coming up. So hopefully we'll all use this 3-day weekend to recharge our batteries, hopefully feel super ready on Tuesday to tackle what's ahead. All right, so our agenda for today, what are we doing? We are talking about accessibility. This was a topic that the past few weeks, when a lot of you voted on what you needed support with, a lot of you were saying you needed this accessibility piece. So you've got it. We're going to talk about accessibility, and we're actually going to talk about it in terms of accessibility and inclusion. Those two terms are oftentimes used interchangeably, but the truth is there are some differences. So we'll talk through those. I'll kind of share with you some facts and figures to be aware of. We'll talk about some tips for inclusive language, what it means to be digitally accessible, and I'm going to run through some elements. I'm going to be really transparent and tell you it's going to feel fast. You're going to go, whoa, that's a lot of information, Laura. What? But this is really just an overview. Again, it's an introductory course. What I will say is that we have classes on each one of these elements. So if you're feeling like, oh man, that was really fast, don't worry. It's designed to feel fast and to kind of give you that broad overview. We do ask, though, when it comes to accessibility, take another session with us, and we'll share all the information on how to do that. Then we'll go on to accessibility checking. We'll show you how you can use some built-in checkers to check for accessibility. I'll show you just a couple of ways to fix it, but again, we have classes on this, so don't fret when it feels a little fast, but I'll walk you through that piece. And then we will end with our wrap-up, talk about attendance, CTLE, and some next steps for next week. So, accessibility or inclusion, what's the big difference, right? Well, the way we like to think of it is that accessibility opens the door, but inclusion really invites people in. Another way to think about it is that accessibility designs for those with differences, whereas inclusion designs with those differences. So the analogy I like to make is, think of New York City. We're an old city, right? We've got a ton of old buildings designed well before this idea of like universal design and accessibility was a thing. We don't knock those buildings down, right? We don't say, well, you know, it's not really accessible. What do? We come in and we retrofit those buildings, right? We add the ramp, we add the elevator, we add in signage that's got the braille on it, right? We go and retrofit. But any new construction that we do, we design with inclusion in mind, right? We don't design a new building and then after the fact go, you know, we should have added a ramp. We should have added the signs. So if you think about it, the best practice is really inclusion, right? When you are going to make anything new, right? When you are going to create a new document, when you are going to create a new slide deck, you want to design with that inclusion in mind, right? You're always thinking about, how am I going to make this so that everyone has access? However, we know that you've already made things, right? You're not going to scrap it. You're not going to throw it away. You're going to go back and retrofit and you're going to make it accessible. But really, we want to live in that place of inclusion. All right. So here's an image. This has been shared all throughout, I think, education in a lot of different ways. But when we look at it with that lens of accessibility and inclusion, what does this image tell you? So we've got this tri-panel, right? We've got the inaccessible image all the way on the left, accessible in the middle, and inclusive on the right. Take a moment, open up the chat if you haven't done so already, and let us know, what does this image tell you about accessibility versus inclusion? Ooh, and I already like what I'm seeing in the chat, right? We're talking about removing barriers, right? Leveling the field for all. I love everything that's popping up in this chat. A lot of talk about barriers, and I want to address that because that is absolutely what, inclusion does. It removes the barriers. But when it comes to digital accessibility, what I like to point out is that oftentimes those barriers are invisible, right? We don't necessarily see the barrier. We don't see that physical fence, right? But there may be, because of the way we've set up our document or our digital content, there may be an invisible barrier that for someone else is going to be glaringly obvious. So when we talk about our digital content, we want to make sure that we're not inadvertently putting in one of those invisible barriers, right? Because it really can impact a person's ability to access your content, to have that really good user experience, right? Again, that barrier, it's not going to be a physical fence. It's going to be some, element that you don't see because you may not have the disability, but someone who does, it's going to be glaringly obvious. So we want to make sure we are removing those invisible barriers. Now, accessible content lets us develop that inclusive community. And again, now more than ever, okay, we need to make sure that we are inclusive of everyone, right? So many of our students are fully remote, and they will be fully remote for the entire school year, right? It's not just, the next few weeks. They may be fully remote for the entirety of the school year. And so we need to make sure we're reaching them. We need to make sure we're reaching our families as well, right? We know that for many of our families, not only do they need information, they need to know, is the school closed? What cohort is my child in? They need some of the most basic information, but they also need to have access to the lessons and the materials being shared, because for some of our families and caregivers, they are also the de facto teacher for their child. They're helping their youngest student. So we need to make sure that when we put out any type of digital content, it's accessible, because if we're leaving people out, right, we don't have that inclusive community. It's also the right thing to do. You've probably seen the DOE mission for equity and excellence for all, but if you haven't, here's what it says. It says that the New York City Department of Education is committed to providing every single child in every classroom, in every New York City public school with a rigorous, inspiring, and nurturing learning experience. And this is true regardless of family income, race, nationality, disability, language spoken at home, sexual orientation, or gender identification. So basically, we have a commitment to educating and reaching every single child. And again, expanding on that, we also have to reach every single family. And we can't say, well, I made it digital. Like, I sent the email, I threw it on the website. Oh, they couldn't read it. Whoops, oh well. That's not going to cut it. That's not good enough. We have to make every effort possible. So again, today is all about kind of showing you those elements, helping you do this work so that you really are reaching the widest audience and you're reaching everyone you need to without leaving anyone out. Now, quick question. Do you know anyone who wears glasses or contacts, speaks a language other than English at home, often asks, what did he say? What did she say when watching TV? Is over 45 years of age, uses a phone to access the internet, uses assistive devices to work, or possibly uses closed captioning on videos, TV, training sessions? Take a moment, pop it in the chat. I get a sense I know what the answer is going to be, but just for the giggles. And I already see Carmen saying all of the above, right? Some of us actually fit into these categories, right? Like, I wear glasses. I actually love closed captioning. And, it's interesting because I've been putting together some presentations on social media, and I actually found out that 75% of Facebook users do not watch the videos on Facebook with sound. They actually watch them completely silent, and they use the closed captioning. So I ask these questions, right? Because oftentimes when we think about accessibility, our mind always tends to think about folks with a disability, right? And we focus on that portion of our population. But there's a lot of folks on what I call like the cusp or the fringe, right? That they don't necessarily consider themselves as having a disability, but they benefit from elements of accessibility, right? So I benefit from closed captioning. I'm not someone that's deaf or hard of hearing, but I benefit from it because I like to watch those videos on mute. I don't need the sound, right? some of us are also in this boat where, maybe we're on the slightly older side. We are losing our hearing, maybe losing our eyesight. We need things magnified. So I like to do this question so that we can understand and kind of put some of the next facts and figures into context, because about 20% of our population reports as having a disability. And that's really, really key, because as you can see, there's a lot of folks that don't necessarily report as having a disability, but benefit from elements of accessibility. So when we talk about, various disabilities, we're talking about things like visual disabilities, which include things like color blindness and low vision, in addition to no vision. We're also talking about hearing disabilities, which includes deafness and hard of hearing, speech disabilities like stuttering, apraxia, dysarthria, motor disabilities, which can include an impact a person's fine motor control. It may be an individual that uses a keyboard or switch only to operate things, and they may just generally have a slower response time. And then you have cognitive disabilities, which impact individuals' ability to focus and manifests itself in various learning differences. All right, so again, this number is just the percentage of the population that reports. We know that in actuality, this number is a lot higher. We also know that we live in New York City, and while we are such an amazing melting pot, rich with culture and just all the goodness of being so diverse, it can also present a challenge, because about 50% of our residents speak a language other than English at home, right? They may not be English proficient. So again, we have a beautiful culture, so much diversity, but we also know that it can act as a barrier, right? When we're unable to communicate with our families. So it's definitely important, to address these things when we're thinking about our content. And I actually see someone asking about captioning. Captioning something you can turn on for yourself if you go into the settings. I don't want to turn my captioning on because it's going to actually impede some of my slides, but you can turn it on and it will show up for you. All right. Now, this is the most important figure that I'm going to share with you. 100% of people benefit from accessibility. Sometimes there's this misconception that if you make accessible content, it's going to impede upon someone else's ability, right? But that's not true, right? When we make accessible content, it's more inclusive and usable for everyone. All right, everyone's going to have a better user experience. It's going to make your information easier to find, to navigate, to understand, right? It gives clarity and consistency to your work. And what's really nice is that, so many of our tech partners are really adding those elements of accessibility. So it really fits in line with kind of where technology is going. And so when you make your content accessible, it's actually going to function a whole lot better, right? It's when we, make our content inaccessible that it actually starts to get clunky and wonky. So the truth is, making accessible content is great for everyone, okay? I promise. Now, some inclusive language tips, because we want to make sure that we are using the right terminology. Sometimes, we don't know necessarily how to refer to things and what to say. So the best practice is really to put the person first. So we might say person with a disability rather than disabled person, people with disabilities rather than disabled. For specific disabilities, we may say person who uses a cane or person with cerebral palsy. However, there are always exceptions. The one I like to call out is the blind community. They are called the blind community. They are not the community that is blind. That actually sounds a bit awkward. So if you're ever unsure, right, ask. It's always kind of best practice to also refer to folks the way they want to be referred to, right? So again, just kind of keep that in mind. These are not always set in stone, but always ask when in doubt. Now, on my screen, you're seeing 17 terms, all right? Some are updated and some are outdated. So I want you to take a moment and I want you to put into the chat which terms you think might be updated and which terms might be outdated. And I'm totally gonna pull a teacher move on you. Don't just tell me the answer, give me the why, right? So if you think, a certain number is updated, say why you might think it's updated. Or if you think something's outdated, why might it be outdated? So take a moment and pop that into the chat. And I see some folks already commenting, midget and it's outdated, it's plain offensive. Here's what I'm going to say about some of these terms. We also have to think about the connotation and the history of some of our terms, right? One of the terms that is not actually on here but has an unfortunate history is the term mental retardation, right? It's actually a medical term, comes to us from the medical world, but because historically it was used as a put down, it was used to make people feel bad, right? We've moved away from that term. We don't say mental retardation. We don't call people mentally retarded. We use other terms, right? Intellectual disability, cognitively disabled, right? So we also have to keep in mind that some of our terms, it's just the way in which the terms have been used. I would also argue that these are not static, right? Sometimes, we go through phases where a term is updated, and then over time, because of the way it's used, because of the connotation around it, it may become outdated. So keep that in mind. But I'm going to now share with you the list. So any term that you see in green is actually an updated term, and any term that you see in white is outdated. So, I saw a lot of folks saying midget was outdated. You are correct. Little person actually is the most updated term. That's the way their community prefers it. But there's always one I like to call out because, again, as a special educator, I see number 2, and I feel like, this is one that is so pervasive in special education, right? We always talk about our students with special needs. And the truth is that that's a very vague term. People always wonder, like, why is that outdated? Because it's vague, right? What does that mean to have special needs? Aren't we all special? Don't we technically all have needs? Aren't we all, if you think of it that way, aren't we all special needs? I had a professor in college when I was getting my degree in special education that said, special education isn't special. It's actually just really good, well-designed instruction that takes into account the needs of all learners, right? Takes into account the learning styles and really breaks learning down into meaningful chunks, right? So this idea of like special education being special, well, not really. It's just really well-designed instruction. So just kind of keep these things in mind. And again, these are not set in stone. A year, 2 years, 3 years from now, these terms will again kind of fluctuate, and you might see terms added and terms, kind of taken out of use. So just kind of keep that in mind. All right, but let's get into it. What does it mean to be digitally accessible, right? So when we talk about accessibility, we are saying that the same information is available to everyone. The same interactions are available to everyone. The same services are provided for everyone, and we have substantially equivalent ease of use, right? So think of it this way. If someone is coming to your school website, right, we want them to have a good user experience, whether they have a disability or they don't, right? Doesn't matter if you're a blind user or if you are hard of hearing, right? If you have an intellectual disability, a physical disability, it doesn't matter. We want folks to be able to interact with your content the same exact way, right? And have that substantially equivalent ease of use. So this is what we want, right? If just one person comes to your site and they're unable to read what it says, right, because it's not easily translatable, or if one person comes to your site and they are unable to interact with your images because there's no alt text, right, then we have done a huge disservice to that individual. We want everyone to have access. And again, it's not just websites, it's all digital content, right? Again, we know that emails are being sent. We know that teachers are sharing, documents and slides. You are sharing documents and slides. So this really expands beyond websites. That's our office started with really looking at websites and making sure websites are accessible. But again, because of this pandemic, we've accelerated our work, and we recognize that it has to be all digital content. Now, when we're talking about accessible content, we're going to cover today 5 basic elements. However, there are a lot more, and I don't want you thinking, oh, it's only these 5, right? It's actually a lot more, and I'm going to go through these kind of fast. This is the part in the presentation where you're going to go, Laura, That was lightning speed, OMG. But here's what I'm going to tell you. We have classes on each one of these elements. And again, to understand these elements even better, we really recommend that you come and take more training with us, because it's hard to kind of go through these quickly and do each one of them justice. All right. But with that said, I'm gonna power through. So our first element is high color contrast. Now, it is no accident that the presentation that you are seeing is in black and white. And in fact, pretty much every presentation that our office does is in this theme. And the reason is that it really does yield the highest color contrast. Black on white, white on black, vice versa, it doesn't matter. But you want to have high color contrast. Now, you know, we know this, right? Our documents are defaulted. We always have, you know, black text on a white background. When this becomes really important is when we're putting together a website or things like slideshows where, you know, we may be tempted to kind of, you know, use the fun colors. You can absolutely make your content colorful. I don't want you thinking like, oh, so everything always has to be black and white. No, but be strategic, right? Think about your color contrast. If your school colors are yellow and orange, you probably don't want to have yellow text on an orange background. That's not going to yield a high enough color contrast. So be strategic when you're using school colors, because we know that that's typically where folks get in trouble. You know, their school colors are like baby blue and white. Again, those are fine school colors, but you don't want to have, you know, baby blue text on a white background. Folks are going to be squinting going, I can't read that. So think through where it makes sense to use various colors, and always keep in mind high color contrast. The second element is proper heading structure. So proper heading structure is utilizing the H1 through H6 tags. It's in the style pane. Now, let me break that down, because I'm sure you're going, huh? What? Style pane, H1, H6? What does that mean? Typically, when you've probably put together a document of any kind, right? You're going to do what I used to do. You highlight text and you're like, all right, this is the title. So I'm going to highlight my text. I'm going to make it large. I'm going to make it bold, right? And then, you know, for your subheadings or for other pieces in your document, you know, you're going to make that text much smaller in font size, right? And so that's your way of kind of giving some structure to your document. But the truth is that that's actually meaningless, okay? Because screen readers, which are tools that many individuals that have a disability are going to use to access digital content, screen readers don't read font size. They don't recognize that, oh, you made the font bigger. Instead, screen readers rely on heading structure. They need to see that text has been marked a heading 1. It'll get read as the title, right? It needs to know that text is marked heading 2, 3, 4, all the way down to 6. It needs to know that. That way, it will read it properly. It will recognize that you are creating a section. The really nice thing too about using proper heading structure, especially within like a Google Docs or Microsoft Word, is it'll create an outline view for you. That's a really, really nice feature once you start creating a document that actually gets quite lengthy. Then you can use the tab button and tab through the different sections in your document. So heading structure is so important. But again, I'm not going to do it justice in the 2 seconds I'm talking about it. So please make sure you come to another class where we really discuss this. This is, if you're looking on our learning calendar, it's formatting for digital accessibility, and we go over how to make sure you're utilizing proper heading structure. The third element is alt text. We want to make sure that you have alt text on all your images. Alt text stands for alternative text. And what that means is that every image that you are using has a written description attached to it. Now, I'm sharing an image right now on my screen, right? It's a gentleman sitting on a tree stump reading from his Kindle. If I don't have alt text, it's like this image doesn't exist to a blind user, right? They're going to come and they're not going to see what us sighted viewers see. That image without any alt text doesn't exist on the page. So instead, you would go into the settings and you would add alt text. Now, alt text, quick, to the point. We don't need to be super verbose.
Here to pick up a device. I gave 2 out from the.
Please make sure, just another quick reminder, please make sure that you are keeping yourself muted for the duration of today's session. So as I was saying, you want to keep your alt text super concise and clear and to the point. So for this image, I would say, man sitting on a tree stump in the woods reading from his Kindle. I don't need to say that he's, wearing a black rain jacket with, brown boots and red shoelaces, that there's a branch behind him with 368 leaves, and there's precisely, 67 trees behind him. That's way too much. You're already bored. No one is reading this image like that, right? Quick and to the point. We also don't want to use images that are just purely text-based. And we see this a lot. You might make an image where it's got, just a bunch of information, right? School is closing. If you need, to call us, here's our number. It's literally an image. It's a JPEG file, but it's all text, right? That's not good. Just make that a text box on your website, right? Or make that text on a document or wherever you're sharing it. But we don't want to have images that are purely text. Not good practice. The fourth element is using meaningful link names. So we don't want links that say click here or read more. That's not really descriptive. Doesn't actually tell a user where they're going. The other thing to keep in mind is that, again, those screen readers, I'm talking a lot about screen readers, but folks that use a screen reader to access your digital content, they're able to pull up a list of all of your hyperlinks. When they do that, if you've got, click here, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 times, they're going to see a list of, seven different links that say click here. They don't know where they're going. So that's not good enough. Instead of saying click here, read more, tell them what they're going to click on, right? So it should say, instead of click here, access the NYC DOE school calendar. That would be the actual meaningful link, right? Not click here or read more about the calendar, right? What we also don't want is the long URL. And let me tell you why. A screen reader would also read that. And if you've seen some URLs recently, they're super long. So a screen reader would get to that URL and go https://www.schools.nyc.gov/back_2_. You're probably already like, stop, please. You're making my brain hurt. That is what a screen reader would do. It would literally read that long URL. And some URLs are pure gibberish. If you've ever seen like a URL to a Teams meeting, it is straight gibberish. So we don't want the long URL either. We want links to be meaningful. The only exception, and you'll see it right now on my screen, is if you're ever doing a presentation where right now I'm sharing my screen, you can't click on anything. What we do is we actually shorten the URL and make it so it's something easy to type. So that's why you're seeing this https://digin.nyc/a11y resource. That is the only time that something like that is acceptable, because again, we want you to have access to our slide deck. But other than that, you really don't want to be in the practice of sharing long URLs. And if you can, again, in a presentation, make it short so that it's easy for someone to type. Now, the last element to talk about is captioning, right? And I know some folks asked about captioning. Best practice, just so that you are aware of, is if you're using a platform where it's already built in, that's a setting that if a user needs it, they turn on for themselves. So do keep that in mind, that you want to be using platforms that have these features of accessibility. I don't need to turn it on for you. If a user needs it, they turn it on for themselves, right? But we want to make sure that all of our videos that get posted to, say, our website, our Twitter, our Facebook, right, that they're captioned. A really easy way to do that is just use YouTube. We have a class on it, but if you're uploading your videos into YouTube, YouTube will actually auto caption for you. So don't think like, oh man, now I need to know how to be like a video editor and add captions. Nope. YouTube has it covered. Just upload it in there, click the auto caption. Again, we have a class on exactly how to do that, I promise. Now, don't forget about your writing, okay? And this is a really, really big one, hence why we've popped this onto its own slide. Accessible content needs to be written in plain language. So what does that mean? we need to make sure that we are writing at about a 6th to a 9th grade reading level. If you can even get it down to about a 5th grade, that's even better. And the reason why is because folks that need your content translated, right, are going to rely on AI. Again, you don't need to translate anything. I'll be really clear about that. Because this question comes up a lot, especially for school websites. You know, it used to be that you could add a widget and then, you know, you could click on the language when you opened up your widget and it would auto translate for you. But the truth is that folks that, you know, are going to need content in a different language set their device that way, right? They're going to set their Chrome browser to Spanish. They're going to set their Chrome browser to French or whatever language they need. So you don't necessarily need to always, you know, provide translations on your website for every little thing. But what you do need to do is write in plain language, because then AI will translate it properly. What happens though in reality is that a lot of, you know, folks in the education world, it's not just teachers, it's admins, it's parent coordinators, it's everybody. We write at this really high academic level, right? We use all that edu jargon. We use acronyms because we're just an alphabet soup over here at the DOE. And we end up creating really, really just complex, you know, documents and writing that when it gets translated, just kind of turns into a whole bunch of like gobbledygook, right? It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So you want to remember that about 50% of your families are speaking a language other than English. They're going to use AI to translate your content. So if you're writing in plain language, right, you're going to ensure that that translation is a bit more accurate, okay? Again, we have a whole class on this. We have a writing in plain language and writing for effective translation class. So if you're wondering, like, what does that entail, how to do this, we have a whole class on it. We actually, and we go really in depth because it's not just like, oh, you know, dumbing down my language. That's not what this is about. It actually has to do with things like your subject verb order, making sure that you're using the right kind of verbiage, prepositions, you know, all of that good stuff, which you're probably going like, oh man, right? Like back to English class. But again, we really do break it down. So join us for a class on plain language and writing for effective translation. And yes, I'm seeing Christina's, we all like to talk super academic. I totally get it, right? And there's a time and a place for it, but remember that this is all about connecting with our families and making sure they have access to our resources. So if we're writing at that super high level, it's not going to be understood and it's useless, right? So we got to make sure that our content and that our resources are actually doing the thing we intend them to do. So we want you to think digital first. If you're thinking paper first, you're not thinking with accessibility in mind, right? So here's a couple of things to kind of keep in mind when we're only, you know, in that paper first mode, right? If it's not digital first, it's not findable through Control F or the tab feature. I can tell you right now, I used to be a former chapter leader, and you know that teacher contract is a 230 page plus document, right? It's super just overwhelming. And if you're trying to find something in that document and you're actually using the paper version of it, like you've gone ahead and wasted a whole tree and printed out all 230 something pages, finding the thing you need is like, you know, searching for a needle in a haystack. But when you're using the digital version, you can use Control F. You can type in your keyword and you can find what you need. And that's actually such a nice feature, right? Whenever you've got a really big document, that Control F feature, it's a game changer, right? You can easily find and jump to a section in a document. Can't really do that with paper. If it's not digital first, it's not increasable to a variety of sizes. I don't know about all of you, but I do not walk around with a magnifying glass in my back pocket. So if you're solely providing paper, right, that print may not be large enough, right? However, if you've made that content digital, again, you give that user the ability to zoom in on content, right? I can set my screen to 200% if I need it, right? I can zoom in. Again, not as easily done if you're working with paper only. If it's not digital, it's not readable by a screen reader, okay? Now, I've mentioned screen readers a few times, but screen readers allow folks who have a disability to be able to interact with digital content. It's gonna read aloud the entire screen. It's going to give them the ability to access things, right? If we're in this paper only world, a screen reader doesn't read paper. That's not really how it works. So again, that content, useless. If it's not digital first, it's not searchable by search engines, right? Again, this is specifically tied to our websites, right? It is why we have a website, right? Trying to put all that information out that exists on your website in paper only formats, oh my gosh, that's daunting, right? Why would we want to use all that paper? So when you've got content that's digital, it's searchable by a search engine. And then that very last piece, which is so important, when we've got digital content, it is translatable by AI. And again, for our population and for our needs, we know that translation is so key, right? We need to make sure that content is easily translatable. So if you're writing in plain language, you're writing for effective translation, you're making that content of yours digital, it's going to reach all of your families, right? But if it's just paper, again, we're limited. So when should content be paper-based only? See if you can find that one example, right? When would we want our content to be paper-based only? Let's see. I'm going to offer a prize to the first one who gets it right in the chat. When might be the one time, right, to make content be paper-based? All right, so Vanessa's saying maybe when it's confidential. Okay. Something that needs filling in with a signature, right? I mean, I would argue, we don't necessarily need it for signatures. There's a lot happening with DocuSign. When needing, again, I see a lot of stuff with signatures, but think through that. How many of you have signed for something during this pandemic digitally, right? At least I have. I've had to sign off on a few things. I mean, and I'm also seeing that confidentiality piece, which is definitely important, but I can tell you right now, you can make things confidential and still digital. So, Veronica, you're getting close. You said not really necessary. So here's the right answer. Lisa's going to get a kick out of this because, right, Lisa? Never, ever, never, ever, ever, never, never, never provide paper only. Now, I did see some folks say, when requested, and that is absolutely true. If someone is requesting a paper copy of something, absolutely have the paper, right? You can certainly provide a paper handout. I don't know why some folks would want it, but if they do, provide it. But when you make it paper only, right? Only, think about all the folks that you leave out. Right? Think about all the folks that are going to go, well, this paper is useless to me, right? So definitely just kind of keep that in mind when you are creating stuff. You can always provide both, and providing both is actually nice. But again, if anything has been shown to us during this pandemic, it's that paper is kind of useless, right? Especially for your people that are fully remote. What are they doing with that? I remember at the height of this, schools were like, all right, let's come up with a whole bunch of packets. Well, those packets lasted for about 2 days before it was like, okay, well, this is not sustainable. How are we getting packets out to kids, for the next few months? Paper is not a really great medium. It's just not. It's certainly something you can provide when requested, but if you're relying on it only, you're leaving people out. Okay, so let's get down into it. Accessibility checking is very much like checking for spelling and grammar, right? So think about when you send that email. Think about when you are creating any type of digital content, right? You're not going to send it out. You're not going to put it out into the world without checking your grammar and spelling, right? You're not going to do that. So why are you submitting any type of digital content without checking for accessibility, right? Let's kind of put it in perspective. Let's check for both, okay? So we're always going to check, spelling, grammar. Did I make myself sound somewhat intelligent, make it sound like I can English? Well, did I make this document, did I make this resource accessible? We always want to check for that, okay? So how do we do that? Well, you want to use an accessibility checker. Now, I'm going to be really transparent. We're going to demo this in Microsoft Word. And the reason that we're doing it is that Microsoft tends to be the most accessible platform, okay? They have the checker built in. Now, some of you might be going, but wait a minute, you know, we use Google for everything. Well, Google is good. Okay, you can certainly use a checker. It's just not built in. It's an extension. It's called Grackle. And the one caveat about Grackle is that it's one of those freemiums. It starts out free. First 30 days are free, in fact, and then it becomes a paid extension. So that's why Google's not quite there yet with the accessibility. They're getting there, and I'm telling you, they have worked with us immensely. But like I said, the built-in feature for Google, not there officially. So we're going to do this in Word. Latiqua is going to drop a link to an inaccessible document. So we'll drop it a few times because I know this is quite a large group. We've got almost 300 participants on this call. So we'll drop it a few times so it doesn't get lost in the chat. But what I'm going to show you while Latiqua's doing that, because I am going to be using the desktop app version of Microsoft, okay, of Microsoft Word, I should say. But if you don't have the most current version of Word, you may not see the accessibility checker. So here's what I want to show you. If you go to portal.office.com and you sign in, you will have access to the online version of Word. So again, this is, I'll type it in so you can see what this looks like. Portal.office.com. You would sign in. I'm already signed in. And I click here on the little Word icon off to the left. That's going to pull up a blank document. And again, I'm just showing you where the checker is so that you can see. Go to review at the top, hit review, and then you see this button here, it says check accessibility. That is what will bring up the checker right here, okay? So I'm just showing this to you so that you can see you always have the latest version of Word with the online version, okay? So if you're running an older version on your desktop, this is the way to kind of get around it. You can always update, and hopefully it should then, if you update your version of Word, you will have access to the checker. But if for some reason you don't, or you're kind of running on a you know, an older machine, you're like, oh, things aren't updating, I don't want to kind of touch that, go online, you have the latest version of Word. But what I'm going to do right now is I am going to, let me pull up my document here. So 1 second, I have to reshare my screen. Okay, so you should be seeing this inaccessible version of a document. So much like before, again, this is the desktop app, so that's why it looks slightly different. And I utilize dark mode. So if you're wondering why my screen looks the way it does, I like dark mode. But you know, if yours doesn't look this way, that's why. But the same process holds true. I go up to the top, I hit review, and then I click on where it says check accessibility, okay? Now I'm not gonna fix all the errors and warnings, but I'm just gonna show you how this works. You see this panel that comes up off to the right, okay? This is the inspection results. So I've got a few errors and I've got a few warnings. The difference between errors and warnings, errors are known issues, right? It's like you're missing something, right? That is going to present an accessibility issue. Warnings are, hey, we think this might be an issue, right? So if I look here where it says hard to read text contrast, right? You can already probably see, but I've got this really light gray text, right? And it's basically saying like, hey, this is probably a problem, right? We're not super confident that it actually is, but it probably is, so you're gonna wanna fix it. So what I like about the built-in checker, and this is why we're using Microsoft, is not only will it tell you why, but it'll give you the steps on how. That is why Microsoft is really leading the way. So why am I fixing this? Because when I don't have proper color contrast, right, it's difficult to read. So increasing the contrast makes the text easier. So what am I going to do? I'm going to increase the contrast by changing the color of the font or by changing the paragraph shading. Okay, I can do either. So I'm going to highlight my text. I'm actually going to highlight all of this. I'm going to go back to the home. And you guys know this, right? Where I've got my text color, I can change it here to black text. I can also, if I wanted to keep it in that light gray text, but I wanted to change the highlighting, right? Look, that also takes out my contrast issues. I don't really like the way that looks, but it does get rid of my text contrast issues. But I am going to change it, make it so that it is black text because I know that that is easiest. And I've got this one period, I don't know why, this one period all the way at the bottom, that's also apparently not enough. There we go. I've knocked out all of my contrast warnings, right? Just by changing the font color. Now you'll notice here I've got an error. Let's go back to the error. So it says missing alternative text. If you will remember from what I just showed you, alt text is on images, right? So when I click on where I'm missing it, it's this first image here. Notice how it highlights it for me. Again, it gives me the why I'm fixing. So alt text for images and other objects is very important for people who can't see the screen, right? Screen readers read alternative text aloud, so it's the only information many have about this image. Good alt text helps them understand. So again, I love Microsoft. It's telling me the why, and then look, giving me the steps. So what am I going to do? I'm going to right click the object. I'm going to then select Edit Alt Text. If the object is meaningful, I'm going to type in that description into the box. If it's decorative, I'm going to select the decorative checkbox. If you're wondering when you might select things as decorative, something like, purely clip arty that really doesn't have anything to do with anything, it's like, oh, it's a cutesy little butterfly on, our spring, event, you can mark that as decorative. But this is a meaningful image, so I'm going to right click, I'm going to select the Edit Alt Text. Notice my Alt Text box appears here on the right. And again, how much easier could this be? It's giving me that prompt. How would you describe this object and its context to someone who is blind? 1 to 2 sentences recommended. Remember, I'm not trying to be super wordy and verbose, right? Short and to the point. Now I want to point out something that you may be tempted to do. You see this generated description for me. You may be tempted to click on this, right? However, I would really encourage you to not do this, all right? The way this works is it's going to use AI to scan the image and generate a description. Typically, AI falls short because it doesn't know the context. So I'm going to click on this so that you can see what it does. You're going to see it's technically accurate, but it's just not good enough. So watch what happens. The description that it comes up with is a group of people standing in front of a crowd. Well, yeah, that's technically what this is, but that's not good enough. That's just not a meaningful description of what's happening in this image. So instead, I'm going to highlight this and I'm going to write my own. I'm going to write a group of singers at LaGuardia High School performing at the NYC Schools Tech Summit in July of 2019. This was not our most recent tech summit, but you can see here how this is definitely more descriptive than a group of people standing in front of a crowd, right? Like that could really just be anything. What are those people doing, right? What's in the crowd? Who, like, huh? So at least this is a bit more accurate. And again, one sentence, right? Don't need to be super wordy. I'm not saying they're standing on a wood floor. I don't need to say there's exactly, 9 people on stage. You don't need to get into all of those particulars, but something that accurately describes it. Now, once I X out of here, look, that error is gone. Okay. Now I'm not going to get to the others because again, there's a lot more that we could do, but I want to point something out that's not showing up on our inspection results. And you may have been going, wait a minute, hold on, but Laura said not to do that. You see on my screen, we've got 2 instances that say click here, and then that really bad one where I've got the long URL. I'm pointing these out because they didn't show up on my checker, right? Notice there's nothing about these meaningful, or I should say unmeaningful links. However, these are problematic. I don't want to use click here, and I don't want this long URL. So I'm pointing this out because as amazing as checkers are and as helpful a tool as they are, you always need to check the checker, right? And we know this. Think about when you've done spelling and grammar. I always had one of those weird last names that the spell check always thought my name was misspelled, right? I would get the little squiggly line underneath it. So we all know that checkers are great, but they fall short, right? Sometimes they don't catch everything. They don't know that we use the wrong version of 2, right? It was spelled accurately, it's just not used properly. So check the checker, right? You also need to kind of proofread and make sure, wait, did I do everything the right way? So in order to fix this, I could just right click. I'm going to go to the hyperlink. I'm going to edit because I don't want it to say click here. This is not good. So the text to display would be NYC DOE resources for multilingual learners, right? And you can see how this is a way better meaningful link than click here, right? This click here, I don't know what I'm clicking on. This tells me exactly what I'm clicking on, right? And the same is true with this long URL. Again, I wouldn't want it to be that long URL. So again, edit hyperlink, right? Nope, taking that out, MIC, whoop, DOE, multilingual learners bill of rights. Okay, so this is way better. Okay, and again, I also fixed this one, but I think you guys get the point, right? So in summary, to kind of wrap us all up, there's a lot of different elements of accessibility. There's a lot of things that we need to ensure so that we're making content that is fully accessible, that is barrier free. As you can see, some of these barriers, particularly when we're talking about digital accessibility, may be invisible to us, right? We don't see that there's no alt text on an image, but if it isn't there, someone who is blind is going to notice and they're going to say, wait, I didn't get that information. So please, when you are making your digital content, have accessibility at the forefront. When you're making new content, design with that inclusion in mind so that you are going to make content that everyone in your community has. I'm going to stop sharing this screen so I can get back to my presentation, but I do want to give some time for participants to do some Q&A. I know we're getting close to our stopping point, but I want to make sure we give some time for that.
Laura, we did have a question from Lisa Ortiz, and she said she was asking about what the best practice is as far as do you create the document in Word and then upload it to Google? And I just wanted to give everyone an answer to that. What we generally do is the best for collaboration is still Google. So we create our documents in Google, do everything we need to do in Google. Then we bring it over to Word to check for accessibility. And then we upload it back into Google. And then you'll have the link. And at that point, it's a document that you won't be like that's your final document that you upload back into Google. So that's what we do for our best practice.
Yeah, and what I will say is that Google has certain pieces of accessibility. I don't want you to think that it's not, but that it's the checker part. And that's the benefit of kind of using Word and uploading it into Word, because then you can run that checker. But again, be wary of the checker, right? Don't think like, oh, I ran it through the checker, done, good to go, right? We also need to check the checker. So,
and that's just like grammar and spelling, you know,
exactly.
The computer doesn't always get it right.
Absolutely. So, you know, again, we'd love to hear from you. If you have questions, please pop it in. But, you know, we also want to hear of something that you're going to commit to doing, right? So I included some possible first steps. Hopefully you'll take an accessibility session with us. We have our learning calendar at digin.mic/learningcal. We're constantly updating that. So if you don't see a session and you're like, wait, but I need that thing, just keep checking back. You can always ping us too and let us know you need support in a particular area. We would be happy to help and make sure that that class gets posted. You can also start using that accessibility checker, right? Again, just like you want to make sure, you know, your documents are spelled appropriately and you've used appropriate grammar, you want to make sure it's accessible. So use that accessibility checker. Make a concerted effort to use person first language, right? I think sometimes we don't think of it and we don't necessarily know because these are habits that are just kind of ingrained in us, but make a concerted effort to use that person first language. Provide digital versions of your paper only resources. Maybe you're realizing like, oh boy, our school, we do a lot of paper stuff. Maybe we need to make the switch, right? So think through that. And if there's anything else that you're going to commit to doing because of something you learned today, certainly pop it in the chat. What I will tell you, if you're feeling a little overwhelmed, because I know that's one of the common feelings, is that when we run through this, it's like, oh my gosh, there's so much. Breathe, take your time, and it starts small, right? Maybe you're just going to commit to, adding alt text on images. You realize, like, wait, that's something we're not doing. Start there, right? Attend another training. This is not a one and done, right? It'd be so much easier if it were, right? If we could just say, yeah, I took an accessibility course. I know how to make everything accessible now. That's just not the way it works. You do need to practice. You do need to come to another session with us. So if you're feeling a bit overwhelmed, it's okay. I promise you this work really will fall into place.
I do have a question for Derry or Christina, but I believe that you are working with DIIT to provide a class on how to use Zoom effectively. Is that true? Because some people are asking for Zoom tips and advice. So do I have that right? Yeah, go ahead.
It looks like we are going to be partnering up, but we don't have a date yet. So stay tuned. We will have that training coming up. I have a question before we end. I know that there's a lot of, right now, we are working on outreach and sending messages to our families regarding the PAPTA elections. How will you use this workshop to write in plain language and accessibility? It's a question that I have regarding how can we turnkey this information now. So really quickly, if you guys can share some of your thoughts on how will you use this training to support our PAPTA when it comes to sharing about the digital elections that we're having.
Hi, this is Christine Colligan from Junior High School 189, Flushing, Queens. How you doing? Good morning.
I love your singing.
You heard my singing?
Yes. How are you, Christine?
Good. How you doing?
Good.
I just want to know, baby, do you have any kind of a clip or video that I can send it to my PTA board or someone who will be engaging the election process? Not overwhelming one, but something that because I went to a face the training, I think last week before, but it's all by the chancellor's regulation, but something like a maybe more level of parents, something that, what to do, what not to do, because they're kind of overwhelming by the new system. So that anything something not too long, but something quick, and just, you have option to either you can get the nomination from the floor. There's things like that. Instead of it was kind of a little too heavy. I have to interpret it, but I think it's good if you have something like maybe 5-10 minutes, something that informative to the parents.
Thank you so much for that feedback. What I'm gonna do is, if you can send me an email to drodriguez60.
Okay. Oh, you Rodriguez? Okay.
Rodriguez63. I'm going to connect you with your liaisons in Queens. I believe you have Diana on the line. There is mock elections that are happening so that you can do a practice run. And we do have a video that we can share with you so you can do a mock election before the actual election.
Oh, that's great.
Families to get comfortable. There is also something that's happening tonight. We dropped it in the chat. That is also a citywide mock election workshop. So thank you so much, Christine.
Thank you.
And
okay. Thank you, there.
I see you're singing again.
And just to kind of make sure we get what we need as we're starting to wrap up our session. In the chat, Latika has posted a few times, but we have our link to the attendance. It's at digin.nyc/remote attendance. Again, Latika has been popping it into the chat. So just click on that. That's what allows us to know that you're here. You'll get a follow-up survey with a link to a survey gizmo. Please let us know what you thought of this class. We love feedback. We do absolutely use your feedback to make our sessions even better. The other thing that you'll notice is that we have launched a poll to see kind of what you want to see in the weeks ahead. Really exciting though, next week we are having EverFi come. So EverFi has partnered with Facebook, and they've put together a really awesome presentation on digital citizenship tools for families. Again, remember what Tali said, we are heading into Digital Citizenship Week. This work is so, so important, particularly now when we know that, you know, all of our students are using some sort of online tool to learn, right? Whether it's for part of the week, whether it's for, you know, the entire week. So we want to make sure that we feel confident supporting not just students, but also families. Because again, many of our families don't know how to do this, right? And they're supporting their kids at home. So definitely join us next week. EverFi will be here. They're going to share resources available to families to discuss digital citizenship and overall wellness. And you're going to walk away with a training toolkit. We also recommend this for your text box. So if you want to share this with them, please do. We love to have everyone. If you haven't figured it out, we are all about just like, yeah, fill the room, pack it. Lisa, I think you're on mute, but if you were saying,
I am. I was just saying we are the Office of Inclusion, and we want to include everyone.
Exactly. We really do ascribe to that whole the more the merrier. So share this, bring your SPOC with you. I would also say, when it comes to digital citizenship, if you haven't partnered with the tech teacher within your building, oftentimes the school librarian, now's a good time to do that. I used to partner when I was school-based. I always partnered with my parent coordinator to deliver the workshop to parents on digital citizenship. And it was always so effective. Parents always felt really supported. So definitely do that. This work is so key. And when you can partner with someone in the building so that you can kind of tackle it together, it just makes it a whole lot easier, right? Like, let's be real. Why do it all on your own?
I just want to answer another question. Some people have asked about the slides. The URL on the bottom of the screen is where you can access the slides, and I believe Derry will also send a follow-up email with this information. And Latikwa has posted it in the chat as well. So lots of ways to get that.
Elisa, thank you for saying that, because that does end our session. Please do not log off until you fill out the survey. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you want to learn. And please.
Oh, excuse me, Laura, can you please give a screenshot of what class or share your screen, because people don't know what class.
Sure. It's Introduction to Digital Accessibility for Educators. So let me.
And then, sorry to interrupt, Derry, please.
Oh, no, thank you for saying that. One of the things I also want to mention, that the link that you sign in on Fridays today is the link that we will use throughout the year. So please save this link in your calendar invite, your Outlook calendar. Just put Digital Professional Development Friday. Every week we will announce the new topic, but the link to log into the site, to this PD, does not change. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us. We really appreciate you. Thank you for all that you do to connect our families, to help our families to participate with the children's education, and most of all, to keep us connected. Thank you again, Laura, Lisa, Tylee, and Latikwa, for this amazing opportunity. We can't thank you enough. This was like, I don't even have the words.
I just like to say that, kudos to the FACE team, because before the pandemic, you guys all the way up on the tweet. Now we are so close. You sending us so much valuable, excellent, the training, and we feel really close. And I'm really give a lot of credit to you guys, and you guys are the best. And thank you so much. I'm looking forward to have more valuable stuff. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful Friday.
We appreciate you. On behalf of FACE and behalf of all of our staff, from the school-based line to the district line to the empowerment line, we thank you for your partnership. And we look forward
thank you so
to
much.
you at our next professional development.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Next Wednesday. Take care, guys.
Derry,
Bye.
I include all the information in the chat, Derry,
Oh,
including tonight's link to join.
tonight, baby. One more time. Do you want to?